Okay, we're going to play with the curves adjustment tools, but before we do that, we need to do something to the photo we're going to be using. So in Bridge, select this photo, 5 Morning Glory Pool. I'm going to double click it and bring it into Photoshop. Now one thing you should notice right away is that this has a big distortion, a camera lens fisheye distortion on this, and you can tell that by the way that the plank here is really curving, even though it should be straight across, and just along the edges there's definitely a lens distortion. So let's fix that first, but before we do that, let's actually make this layer a smart object. So one way to do that is you can actually come up here to the fly away panel here, this menu that comes up, and you can do convert to smart object. Convert to smart object. So let's click that. Okay, and now with that having the symbol being there to show that this is a smart object, let's now go to filter, lens correction. Okay, this is going to bring up another box in front of our canvas here, and we're going to do some corrections to this in this box. Now normally this would give the camera mode and other information. It would be embedded into the image, but this is actually a screen capture I did of a video from a video that we took last summer in Yellowstone on the faculty student trip to Yellowstone. And so there's no information here, but you can enter it in here, and it is a GoPro camera. Okay, you're going to instantly see the difference. It's actually correcting that fisheye distortion, and this was a Hero 3 Plus. Okay, so that even does something else to it. Okay, and then this you can put as well as Hero 3 Plus. Up here, geometric distortion. Okay, that corrects for the distortion. So you see that's definitely affecting this. This actually, chromatic aberration affects color misalignment, especially along the edges. We probably won't see much of an effect from that, but we'll go ahead and check that. Okay, this is looking good, but let's look over at Custom to look at some things. So you see these tabs. Custom allows you to make this even more distorted if you intentionally wanted to distort something, and you see that is very funky, and that could be useful for some things, for playful images. So that's the barrel option, the further you go down there. This is the pincushion direction here, and it does the opposite. It pushes it back, the center back into way into the distance there. So I'm going to bring that back to 0, or slightly to the right maybe. So up here there's another way to drag that same tool that we just played with by clicking on that. Okay, and then you can click inside your image. Okay. This allows you to straighten the horizon by drawing a straight line. Now we can just move along the edge here. The problem with that is I'm not sure that that was straight to begin with, because if you do this, which allows you to show grid, you may have to check this at the bottom, and then you drag to one of the horizontal lines fits the one of the edges of the planks. It kind of looks like it's going downhill. So when you drag the horizon, what you might want to do, or drag rather the straightening line, you might want to go slightly down. Like that. I think that's a little better personally. And then as you look at the line, let's go back to the grid, being able to move the grid here. That seems to align more with the horizon. And so that fence might be slightly crooked. Okay, so after we're done with that, we can go ahead, and there are some other aspects here you can play with. If this box is checkable, you may want to check vignette to see how that changes things, but it's grayed out in this case. Okay, so here is our image. If you need to go back in that, you can. Okay, and you're able to check before and after. The unfortunate thing is we're going to lose some people here, and I believe that's Ed, who is in our group. He's going to be pushed out of the picture. Oops. You see that? Because they are correcting, and this picture bows outward, so they just have cropped it automatically. But we've avoided the lens distortion now, and it's corrected that, and so we're ready to do what we want to do with it. We're going to remove the color, or at least mute the color of the background and the foreground, and we are going to make this really pop, the Morning Glory pool. This is called the black and bright effect, or Pleasantville effect, or filter. It's really neat, and you'll be able to use this on your photos, and you might really enjoy this. And so we're going to use the curves adjustment layer, but first we're going to select the pool. Okay, now as you see, the pool was behind this protective fence because, as you know, there's a lot of people who would maybe even just dive headlong into that if they could, and they have to be reminded that these things are death traps. They're very hot, and they're also very fragile. But anyway, so we want to just work with the pool, or we want to work the pool and the fence. But for now, let's try to just grab what we can of the pool. Okay, so it might be tempting to use the elliptical marquee tool. So do you see where I got that up here? Holding down the marquee tool, which showed the other ones underneath. And then you could even hold down Shift and Option as you do this, and it's going to constrain this to a circle. The problem is, though, is that that's definitely not a perfect circle, right? So I'm going to Command Z. By the way, you would start in the middle. Hold down Shift and Option as you do this, and then if you kept holding it down, use the space bar, then you could even move it around. But that's not going to be useful because that's just not a circle, a perfect shape of a circle, especially in our perspective here to the side. So instead, let's come down to this lasso tool, the one underneath. Okay, I'm grabbing the polygonal lasso tool right here. Do you see where that is? It's nested in with the lasso tools. And I'm going to start over here. Okay, I don't want the sign for now, though I might get it later. Okay, I'm getting the pool. You could potentially use the magnetic lasso tool as well. Here I am going to have to get the fence, and that's all right. Okay, there. So now you see the marching ants, the dotted line there. All right, and what you're going to do is you're going to come down here, and you're going to go under the adjustment layer options to curves. Okay, and that's going to form, the marching ants disappear. That is now, as you see, a mask right there. It's created a layer mask, adjustment layer there, based on what I just did. Now, by the way, if you wanted to, you could reselect it, and let's say, oh no, I need to move it around a little bit more. You could go up to Edit, And you could transform that a little bit more. Okay, so let's say you want to make it bigger. I don't want to do that, but let's say you did, or you even wanted to move the whole thing. Okay, you could do that. All right, but I don't need to do that, so I'm going to just check or cancel that movement. All right. Okay, so in curves, so you can get to that through the properties panel, and then you would click here if you're in here. Okay, which shows you the curves. This is very similar to levels, okay, which we did in a previous tutorial. You have the sliders, and you see already you're getting some gorgeous color by just clipping the whites and the blacks there. But you see here, instead of a midpoint slider, you have this curve that allows you to do up to 16 points. Can you believe that? 16 points, which gives you really a powerful tool in playing with the contrast of your image. Now that's probably overkill. We might only need 2 or 3 points for this, and you can just drag them and then they will disappear if you drag it off the, but I mean, if it gets really funky, the image, once you start doing extreme waves into your curve there. And so you probably don't want to do that. It's a good idea. Notice it removes contrast from other areas if you really push it too much. Okay, so let's take off some of these. Okay, so we are probably going to clip from black a little bit since there's not much over here, right? So that's a good opportunity to clip. And then we really don't need all this, so we'll take some of those off. Okay, so now I might even clip from here a little bit, clip from white, right? Because I want to build my contrast. Now you can constantly be looking back and forth at what it was before. Okay, without it. I'm getting some nice color here now. There's definitely less of a haziness look to it. It's definitely defining the pool a little better. All right. Add this back a little. Okay. It'd be nice to get this to be darker in the middle. There we go. Now you're probably noticing we're seeing a hard edge right here. We're going to be able to do something with that, so just wait and see. Okay, and that kind of corresponds to the middle there. Okay, now I encourage you, once you're getting it to about how you like it, I really like that yellow, you might want to start backing off just a little, because what looks good to you at first might seem a little extreme later, and it's like, oh, that photo's been really manipulated in Photoshop. So it's a good idea to be careful and maybe back off as you're finishing up your manipulations there. Okay, so we like that. And remember, you can just drag them off the curve, hold down and drag if you want to remove a point. Okay, so I'm going to nest that back in there. Notice here, I'm going to actually deselect it again. Notice this hard edge here. Okay, there's a few things you can do. You can actually paint with black. Okay, and you can actually, so I can click the letter B to get a brush. You probably want a hard-edged brush. Okay, so probably select that one. Okay, and you can actually paint with black, so make sure the black is on the foreground there. If it isn't, you can exchange. And you can get rid of that. You can actually get rid of the fence altogether. And you see how when you option click, I need to paint that a little better in this area. But that is the fence, right? Right there. All right, so later what we're going to end up doing, and I'll show this to you more slowly next time, but we're going to command click onto there. We're going to then inverse it up here, and then we're going to be creating another adjustment layer here. Okay, you see that's pretty dramatic, isn't it? Okay, so you might like that option, and you can do that, right? But you might want to include the fence. Okay, so right now I had just removed the bit of the fence by painting with black and getting rid of the part of the fence that overlapped the pool. But let's go back a few steps. Okay, let's go back a few steps, and now let's include the fence. So we're going to paint with white. Okay, remember you want to have a hard-edged brush, and let's actually include the fence, and it'll add some nice texture, right? So it's okay if you go too far. You can either undo or you can paint. You can exchange and then paint with black. So you see now the mask is getting bigger because I am including all of this. Notice that that's really hard to read, but now as we're adding contrast, it is helping to read that this actually says the Morning Glory Pool. We took this image last summer, 2016, on the faculty-student ISU trip to Yellowstone. You can see members of our group over here, actually. Okay. So that is bringing some nice contrast into the fence. You can option click on the mask to see how you're doing. And I can see that's not real straight, so there are some spots there that I need to correct. I can do that right here on the mask, but of course I can't see the edges. I can estimate, and then I can click the eyeball here to go back. Alright, and that needs to be, you could change the size of the brush if you need to. Alright, looks pretty good. Alright, so you might notice that there might be a hard edge. It actually looks kind of good with this, but let's say you wanted to soften the edge. You could go back to your properties panel and then you could feather that a little bit. And when you option click into the mask, we see that that is feathered. It's been softened. Notice if you really feather, the whole thing seems to get blurry. Okay, so that's good. You really don't need to do it that much since it's supposed to be a hard edge. It's a fence of a very different texture and shade than the background. Okay, so we can now desaturate everything else that's not the fence and the Morning Glory Pool. I'm going to show you how to do that again more slowly. You're going to command click in the mask. Okay, it's very important that you command click on the masks. You've now selected the mask. Notice we missed a good bit of parts there. You may want to actually go back and deselect it and paint a little more with white to get that edge a little better, or whatever you see that you need to do. That really shows you if you got it. So command click on the mask, let's just say. Okay, you see it's pretty sloppy edge work there, but anyway, we could be here all day. Now you're going to go into select menu and you're going to choose inverse. Okay, you have to go under select menu unless you want to hold down three things at once. That's the keyboard shortcut there. It's a different inverse command than the other one, or they're similar. Okay, notice now it's grabbing everything else. You see the dotted line is there, it's there. Okay, now you're going to go with everything else selected to the adjustment layer options and grab black and white. Okay, and look, now we have some color here. The fence, we definitely have color there. And you're saying, well, what about these people? They're kind of in color. Well, that might be neat too, to have the people in color. So you could include them, or you can paint with white and then get rid of them. Okay, that might be neat to have them have a little color. Now let's say you're thinking, wow, that's so desaturated. Well, all you have to do to bring back some of the saturation is to back off on this and maybe about to 85, something like that. So you have a little bit of color, but it's still a pretty interesting image when you desaturate or remove some of the saturation. Now, here's a challenge. Let's say I sure wish that sky were blue, and I wish I could read this a little better. Well, I was working with this earlier, and I did do that with this. Not that, but this. Okay, and notice what I did. I applied what I've already shown you. Okay, I did a levels adjustment layer with the sky on top there. And then there's actually a hue saturation adjustment layer and a curves adjustment layer on just the sign. Okay, so you can go back and do that using the tools I've shown you. Notice though down here, the black, white, what we just did, where we desaturated, that's only set to 65. That's pretty low. And the reason I had to do that is to get the color in the sky, because we're layering on the same thing. You had to leave some saturation there for it to play with. Okay. Otherwise it's just going to be more, you're just going to actually add more black up there. So, see if you can take that same image and add a few more adjustment layers and turn that into that. Have fun with it.